Are we all here? Well, Leader Schumer will be joining us momentarily, and when he does, he'll have some remarks. I will start it off. I'm Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, and of course I thank everyone who's here, and especially Leader Pelosi, and as I said, when Leader Schumer comes. Representative Cartwright, where are you? Oh. And everyone else who's here. I'd like to start with a few words regarding Justice Kennedy's retirement. The next Supreme Court justice will have the power to overturn Roe v. Wade and take away health care protections for tens of millions of Americans. And the next Supreme Court justice will also be in a position to continue the decades-long assault on working people funded by, hello, Chuck.
Hello.
Okay, let me finish my sentence, okay?
Please,
funded by, thank you, funded by far-right groups like the Koch brothers. And the groups have spent millions and millions of dollars to pack our courts with people who will serve their own interests. And I know this, of course, as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And yesterday, this all-out effort continued, sadly and predictably, with the Supreme Court's decision in Janus versus AFSCME, a decision that will undermine the fundamental rights of public sector workers across the country to unionize and bargain collectively. And these are people, we know the public sector workers. They are our families, they are our friends. These are people who are serving our communities, educating and nurturing our children, keeping us safe and caring for our families. They deserve our support and protection. It's why we are introducing our bill today, the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, which reaffirms every public sector worker's right to join a union and bargain collectively with their employees for better wages and working conditions. And it sets federal minimum standard that every state in this country must meet to provide these basic rights to our public employees. And these standards include the right of employees to organize and form a union. These are not normal times. We all need to come together to fight back against this all-out assault on working people. I'm going to turn to our Leader Schumer for your remarks, and then right after that, I'd like to ask Leader Pelosi to step up.
Thanks, Maze. Thank you, Senator Hirono. I'm sorry I was on the floor talking about an issue called the Supreme Court, which is related to why we're here today. And I want to thank all of our colleagues for being here. I want to thank our great leaders in labor. And in the past few days, we've seen just how powerful the Supreme Court can be when it comes to the lives of middle-class Americans and those struggling to get there. And the Janus decision is a gut punch to working people across America. It's a gut punch to income equality. It's a gut punch to 50 years of progress. It's a despicable decision. And the court reached out to overturn 40 years of precedent on a flimsy, almost made-up First Amendment justification to meet their ideological needs. When John Roberts came before us, he said he would call the balls and strikes. The Janus decision was a political wild pitch, nowhere near the strike zone. We Democrats are going to fight hard to undo it. The greatest problem in America, probably bar none, is that middle-class incomes are not keeping up. Why did middle-class incomes advance so much? It was because of these people. These people. And Monica, yeah, I pointed to Monica. And their predecessors on whose shoulders they stand. They fought, they were hurt to create the right to organize. And the golden age of America was when America was unionized. And middle-class incomes and pensions and health care advanced. But now the hard right wants to take it away. They know they could never pass this stuff, even in a conservative House and Senate, and so they use the one elected body, the one non-elected body, the Supreme Court. We Democrats aren't going to let that happen. That's why yesterday we introduced a bill that ensures that public employees, teachers, nurses, healthcare providers, firefighters, police officers, EMTs, librarians, correctional officers, and so many others have the right to organize, act concertedly, and bargain collectively in states that currently do not afford them these basic rights. My colleagues will describe the bill in more detail, but what happened in the Supreme Court shows why we must not have another hard-right Supreme Court nominee who will not follow precedent and put their own ideological stamp on issue after issue. Janus illustrates that and should be a clarion call to working people to make sure that another nominee who will do that, and you can be certain that anyone who made that list of 25, culled by the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, will move to remove even more workers' rights. We will fight it all the way, as we will fight as hard as we can to undo Janus with the legislation we're introducing today. Leader Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader, for your very strong statement. Thank you, Senator Hirono, for bringing us together here this morning. It's an honor to be with our champions for working families in our country, President Trumka and President Saunders, and a wonderful representative of the SEIU, Monica Roberts. Thank you, Monica, for being with us. I'm with our colleagues, and you'll hear from them as they speak. If others come who are not speaking, I will acknowledge them. But let me just acknowledge this. With its decision that it announced yesterday, the Supreme Court became the Supreme Corp. That's in short for corporation. They are handmaidens of corporate America. They are there to undermine workers in our country. They did so in trying to suffocate the voices by giving corporations unlimited access to dark special interest money in the Citizens United decision. And now yesterday, they did violence to our democracy by trying to diminish the voices of working people, amplify the voices of corporate silent special interest money, diminish the voices of workers. That's not the American way. Their decision does violence to the First Amendment, cheapening it and using it, stretching it as a rationale for this decision. It does violence to stare decisis by abandoning a decision in this respect. And that endangers so many decisions that have already taken place in the court. And what does that do? It hurts America's working families. The trade union movement has been responsible, as the distinguished leader said, for establishing our middle class. Indeed, the middle class has a union label on it. We all agree with that. Our entire society and our economy have benefited from organized collective bargaining, protections in the workplace in terms of work safety, benefits and health care and the rest. Every worker in America, whether they belong to a union or not, has benefited from the leadership of the trade union movement. That's why the ultra-conservatives in our country want to undermine it. And as the leader said, they couldn't do it legislatively, so they're taking to the courts. Shame on this court for this decision, especially on top of the Citizens United decision. Undermines the First Amendment, undermines stare decisis, undermines our democracy. So some of these decisions that could be affected, if they're casual about decisions that have already been made, would be Roe v. Wade, voting rights, civil rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights are all at stake with this Supreme Court. Under the GOP control of Washington, jobs, health care, basic rights are under threat on this Trump court. So what's at stake? What's at stake is the character of America and the future of our children. That's why we are pleased that this is a raw deal for the American people. We have a better deal, better jobs, better pay, better future. And part of that is the legislation that was referenced by the distinguished leader that is being introduced today that Senator Hirono referenced. That is part of our better deal. But we are going to fight this because this is about, again, the character of America, the strength of the middle class, which is the backbone of our democracy. With that, I'm pleased to yield to Representative Cartwright of Pennsylvania, who is the author in the House. Oh, we have a different order?
No, that's okay. Is that okay? Yeah, please.
Oh, Patty.
Cartwright.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was just looking at the list here.
I know, Representative Cartwright, if you don't mind, I know that Senator Murray has to get to her Appropriations Committee, and you are one of the lead sponsors of this bill in the House side.
So I'm pleased to yield to a distinguished champion for workers' rights, the ranking member on the committee.
Representative Cartwright, I really appreciate it, and thank you to that, and thank you to everyone who's up here championing this. But before I address yesterday's Supreme Court decision, I do want to say that right now there are people across this country who are deeply and rightly worried about how Justice Kennedy's retirement affects their day-to-day lives. They're going to have questions for this Trump administration, and every Republican who decides the people don't need a voice now that President Trump is in charge after blocking President Obama's qualified nominee. They will have questions like, what will a Trump Supreme Court nominee mean for my coverage if I have a pre-existing condition? Will my daughter grow up without the right to make her own decisions about her own body? The issue at the core of what we're talking about today, will I be able to stand up for my rights at work, including my right to join a union, and a lot more. Women and men nationwide know exactly how much is at stake, and so do the Democrats here in the Senate. And we are going to push Republicans to agree we should wait for voters to weigh in before moving according to Senator McConnell's own rules. And also join us in rejecting nominees that would take us too dramatically backward on issues that are so important to who we are as a country. Yesterday's Supreme Court decision underscores how important this is. It was a loss for workers and another win for corporate special interests that have spent decades chipping away at workers' rights and fighting to dismantle unions. But unions and the people they represent are not going to stand by and watch. They are going to organize, fight back, and have their voices heard. And that includes fighting for workers' rights and representation. And I want you to know Democrats are proud to stand with them. For more than a century, unions have organized to lift up the voices of workers who have been otherwise unheard, and fought for fair pay and safe working conditions and better benefits. Unions helped create the 40-hour work week. They ended child labor. They strengthened the middle class. And unions are still today empowering workers in cities and states nationwide. We know that where there are unions, all workers benefit. And we know unions are still the most effective pathway to the middle class. So I'm very proud to join my colleagues to co-sponsor the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, and I especially want to thank Senator Hirono for her leadership on this legislation. The bill that she has introduced guarantees that our public employees, that's our teachers, our nurses, our first responders, our librarians, people like that, the basic right to organize and bargain collectively in every state across the country. This is one more important step the Democrats are taking to stand up for workers and their unions and build an economy that does work for all of us, not just those at the top. Earlier this month, we introduced the Workers' Freedom to Negotiation Act. That is a bill that will level the playing field for private sector workers by strengthening their bargaining power and their right to join a union and be treated fairly on a job. Our economy only works when it works for everyone. And I urge all of our Republican colleagues who claim to care about the economic security of the middle class, join us in standing up for unions and working families and the middle class. And I urge the people across this country to stand up, make sure Republicans know the stakes of this Supreme Court vacancy, why it matters to them in protecting their rights and their freedoms, and what they want Republicans to do about it. Thank you very much, and I will turn it back over to Congressman Cartwright and thank him so much for yielding and for his work on this issue. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. With regret, I say that we are unfortunately gathered here to mark really a low point in the labor law of the United States of America. This week, with the case of Janus versus AFSCME, as many expected, a narrow majority, 5-4 of the court, reversed 40 years of American legal precedent, took the fabric of American law and tore it up to set back the rights of working men and women. And make no mistake, this is not just public sector working men and women. This is public sector people. We're talking about snowplow drivers and state correctional officers and local policemen and firefighters and the people that make us safe and secure and educate our children, the people that get out of bed every day, take care of their kids, feed their kids, and then they go to work for us to protect us. And their rights were directly implicated by this Janus decision. But make no mistake, it doesn't stop with them. If you work in a labor union, if you're a member of a labor union that is a private sector union, if you're a heavy equipment operator, if you're a steel worker, if you're a miner, this affects you too because they're coming for you next. This is the camel's nose under the tent flap, and they're after you. This Janus decision was not jurisprudence, it was bare-knuckle politics. And prominent Republican politicians are already out there saying how much this will hurt the Democrats and how great that is. Well, make no mistake, it's the Democrats sticking up for the regular working people in this country, and it's the Democrats here today talking about how bad Janus is and how it hurts everybody. Even if you're not in a union, the fact that unions are out there negotiating better wages and better working conditions for everybody, that helps everybody. You know a rising tide floats all boats. And even if you're not in a union, the Janus decision threatens your way of life. Ladies and gentlemen, Justice Kagan, in her dissent, made a prescient point. She talked about how now the Bill of Rights is being used differently, isn't it? She said the First Amendment has now been weaponized to use against ordinary, regular working people. And that's what happened exactly in the Janus decision. And I say presciently because there's more of this to come. We can see this. This is what brings us together this morning. I'm Congressman Matt Cartwright, and I represent northeastern Pennsylvania, where labor rights are time-honored and traditional values. It is in northeastern Pennsylvania that labor leaders like John Mitchell gathered. Great trial lawyers like Clarence Darrow spoke for the mine workers, helped to establish the Fair Labor Standards Act, 8-hour workday, 40-hour work week, weekends, getting children out of the mines. We understand the importance of labor rights in northeastern Pennsylvania, and so I'm proud to be here among my colleagues. What we're doing here is announcing and I'm announcing introduction in the House by the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act. This is a bill that strengthens the rights of public employees to stand together as one, to negotiate with their employer. It protects the rights of employees collectively to bargain for decent pay and fair workplaces. And of course, we have several Democratic co-sponsors on this bill, but we reach out and urge our Republican colleagues to join us because this is not the way America should be going. We should be honoring and valuing the regular, ordinary, hardworking men and women in this country and not stripping away their rights. I'm Congressman Matt Cartwright, and I'm proud to introduce the House version of this bill. Thank you so much.
You. And now we'll hear from Congressman Scott from Virginia, another sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, and we're going to recognize our colleague Don Norcross from New Jersey in the back. Thank you, Don. Thank you very much, Senator. Yesterday, the Supreme Court not only attacked public sector unions and millions of workers they represent, It also attacked one of the greatest engines of economic justice in America. It is not a coincidence that the decline in union membership has been accompanied by a dramatic rise in income inequality. Between 1980 and 2014, wages for the bottom half of income earners grew by 1%. During the same time, income for the top 1% grew over 200%. This extreme inequality does not occur naturally. It's a result of an economy that's rigged against workers, and yesterday the court's conservatives made that problem even worse. My colleagues have detailed the benefits of union membership. That is greater access to medical and retirement benefits, more time to take care of loved ones who may be sick, and of course, higher wages. The benefits are not limited to just the individual employee. They are passed down from generation to generation. Children of union members have more upward mobility than children of non-members. It is just important to note the inconsistent messages that conservatives are sending to working families. They preach the value of hard work while undermining the employee's ability to get paid for that hard work. They preach value of fiscal responsibility and then spend $2 trillion in tax cuts that overwhelmingly benefit corporations and the wealthy. Today, Democrats and unions are standing together to send a clear and consistent message: American workers deserve a fair return on their work. The legislation that we're introducing today is based on a bipartisan bill that passed with overwhelming support, over 300 votes in 2007. That bill protected the collective bargaining rights of state and local police officers, firefighters, and other public safety employees. This bill simply expands the coverage to additional state and local government employees, and I look forward to bipartisan support on this bill as well. In addition to the Comprehensive Workers' Freedom to Negotiate Act, which we introduced earlier this month to defend the rights of private sector workers, this bill strengthens public employees' ability to negotiate for higher wages, decent benefits, and a fair, safe workplace that they deserve. It's now my pleasure to introduce the co-chair of the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, the gentleman from Rhode Island, David Cicilline.
Thank you, Bobby. Good morning. I am really delighted to be here and join my colleagues both in the House and the Senate on this really important occasion. I particularly want to acknowledge the heroic leadership of Richard Trumka and Lee Saunders and say thank you for not only being in this fight, but for what you do every day to support working families in this country, and to also say thank you to Ms. Roberts for her work as well. I think when many of us heard of the decision yesterday, although it was not completely a surprise, we sort of thought back to a time when both political parties used to support strong labor unions. In fact, it was President Dwight Eisenhower who said, "Only a fool would try to deprive working men and women of their right to join the union of their choice." The American labor movement helped build the middle class of this country and make it strong. Unions are the most effective way to move people into the middle class. And unions are the reason that working people have weekends off, safe working conditions, good wages, good benefits, employer-provided health insurance. Unions led the fight to end child labor and to provide family and medical leave. Unions have been chiefly responsible for one of the biggest challenges we face in this country, and that is how do we increase family wages, people not making enough to get by. Today, union workers make on average 27% more than their non-union counterparts. And all of these benefits that have come about as a result of the strong labor movement in this country have not only benefited the members of the union, but they've benefited all working people in this country. If we want a strong and growing middle class, we need strong unions. And that's why yesterday's decision from the Supreme Court, the Janus decision, is so devastating, not only for the country, but for working families in America. This is a decision that's really the latest in a long line of corporate-funded attacks on working people. And remember, the workers that we're talking about here are firefighters and police officers and teachers and sanitation workers and plow truck drivers. Wall Street, the big banks, big business have spent decades trying to undermine unions by denying working people the freedom to organize and collectively bargain. And the Janus decision is a result of that long effort. But they've done everything they can to make it harder for working men and women to negotiate for decent pay and fair working conditions. This is wrong. We all know this is America. The rules are if you work hard, you play by the rules, you should be able to provide for your family, buy a home, save for retirement, and provide your kids with a better life than you've had. In this country, we should always honor hard work with a good wage and good benefits. And Democrats have a very bold plan to make sure that that continues to happen. This will start with the introduction today of the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, which will ensure public sector employees have the right to form a union. The right to organize is central to our commitment to give working people a fighting chance to get ahead in this country. When we take back the House in November, we're going to move forward on this bill that supports working families. And although the Supreme Court has tremendous power, we've seen that in a series of terrible decisions, Congress has tremendous power too. We can fix this. And we're going to elect people who will put these policies into place to ensure that we provide better jobs, better wages, for a better future for all Americans. And as Leader Pelosi said, this is a moment. This is a moment that's going to test the character of our country and the soul of this nation. And we're going to prove to them that we're in America where everyone can get ahead, where everyone has a fair shot, and people have the right to organize and collectively bargain to ensure a better future for themselves. Thank you.
Okay. Are we getting fired up? Next, we're going to hear from President Saunders of AFSCME.
Thank you. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
You know, this morning, I'm reminded of a quote by Ronald Reagan in a speech he gave on June 8, 1982, to the British House of Commons. And he said this: "The objective I propose is quite simple to state: to foster the infrastructure of democracy, the system of a free press, unions, political parties, universities, which allows a people to choose their own way to develop their own culture, to reconcile their own differences through peaceful means." Yesterday, with this decision in Janus versus AFSCME, the Supreme Court tried to strike a blow to one of those pillars of democracy, and they will not succeed. The folks who pick up your trash and answer your 911 calls, who drive your school buses and plow your roads, they work hard every single day to keep our communities safe, to keep our communities strong. 5 Supreme Court justices, they've decided that they don't deserve the freedom to negotiate, don't deserve a freedom to negotiate on a fair return on their work and stand together in a strong union. Indeed, it's larger than that. So many of the court's recent decisions raise a very, very real question. Can ordinary people, women, Muslims, working people, LGBTQ people, get a legitimate and fair trial before the United States Supreme Court anymore? These are very serious times for our democracy. The Janus case was about one thing. It was about one thing only: rigging the economy so that the super wealthy can even have more power and wealth, so that the privileged and powerful can take more for themselves at the expense of working people who are trying to play by the rules every single day. That's why this legislation is so important. The Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act is about making sure people have greater ability to choose, as Ronald Reagan said, their own way to develop their own culture, to reconcile their own differences through peaceful means. This bill is a legitimate antidote to an illegitimate Supreme Court decision that was bought and paid for by billionaires and driven solely by animus against labor unions. Make no mistake about it. It would strengthen collective bargaining, putting the law on our side and additional wind at our back. The folks in the majority up here on Capitol Hill are serious about empowering working people. They will bring this bill to the floor as quickly as they possibly can. You know, the 1.6 million proud men and women of AFSCME are unbowed. They're everyday heroes. They never quit. We're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to build power. We're going to continue to come together in collective action to improve our lives and serve every single day our communities. And most of all, Millions of public service workers and their families saw the attack on them yesterday, and you better believe that in November they're going to vote. The handful of justices isn't going to stop us. The grassroots momentum, I believe, is on our side. Unions enjoy stronger public support than they have in 15 years, with approval ratings above 60%, according to the Gallup poll. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the congressional leaders in this room for being such strong champions of the labor movement, of such strong champions for working people, for making our rights and freedoms a centerpiece of the Better Deal agenda. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay. Now, President of AFL-CIO, Richard Trumka.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everybody. I first want to thank Leader Pelosi and Leader Schumer and all of the pro-worker elected officials who have joined us here today. And I also want to thank my fellow labor leaders, Lee and everybody else who continue to show poise and to show grace while under relentless attack. And finally, I want to recognize all the union members, those present and future, who inspire us to keep fighting for our freedoms every single day. Now, obviously, we were disappointed with the Supreme Court's decision in Janus versus AFSCME. A narrow 5-justice majority, emboldened by a stolen seat, overturned 4 decades of common sense precedent. And I want you to remember this. This case wasn't pushed from the bottom, workers clamoring for it. This case was solicited from the Supreme Court bench itself by Justice Alito, begging people to file a suit so that he could overturn precedent. It's the latest misguided action by the most corporate-friendly court in our history. I want to repeat that. The most corporate-friendly court in American history. But I got to tell you, make no mistake about it, because I stand before you today as optimistic as I ever was. Not just because we have great friends and great representatives that are willing to pass legislation to right a bunch of the wrongs that are out there. I say this is a guy, by the way, who just got his 50-year pin in the United Mine Workers. So I've seen a lot of labor movements. I've seen a lot of the economy. The labor movement has never depended on any politician or any judge to decide our fate. And we're not about to start with 4 or 5 judges. In the end, I can promise you something. Janus is going to be a footnote in history at best. This moment in history is being defined by workers organizing. Something's happening in America, and it's real, and it's very, very beautiful. And it can't be contained by 5 justices or 51 Republican senators or even the President of the United States. All over our country right now, workers are organizing, and they're striking as we haven't seen in years. 15,000 workers in April, in 1 week, joined the union. And that's on top of the 262,000 new members who joined our ranks last year. And the optimistic, to be even more optimistic, 75% of them were under the age of 35. Our turn's coming. And despite the fact that too many of our labor laws have been written to undermine the freedom to organize. Now, new research from MIT shows a 50% increase in the number of non-union workers who would vote to join a union tomorrow if given the opportunity. Tens of millions of workers are ready to experience the transformational power of collective bargaining. And in many cases, all that stands in the way is a rigged system. That's why the Better Deal labor law reform bills, the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, and the Workers' Freedom to Negotiate Act. Bills introduced by the House and Senate Democrats are a major, major step in the right direction and a very, very important pillar to righting an economy that really doesn't work for anybody but those at the very top. Those two bills would strengthen the freedom to organize by expanding the law so that millions of additional workers can access collective bargaining, remove substantial chunks of the anti-worker Taft-Hartley Act, and make the process of forming a union and reaching a first contract a whole lot more fair. And I have to tell you, we're proud, very, very, very proud to endorse these bills and to support them. And we can tell you this, any candidate who wants the support of working people is going to have to support those bills as well. Let me be clear. The Supreme Court is on the wrong side of history. What they did flies in the face of where America is headed, where workers want to go and where workers need to go. And it shows exactly how out of touch they are with the real America that's out there. Janus or no Janus, workers are demanding a voice. We're standing up and we're speaking out for a better life. We're demanding a fair share of the wealth that we help create. We're marching and we're organizing and we're bargaining. And we simply will not allow a corporate-controlled Supreme Court to stop us from doing our job. Thank you. Thank you for putting forward a better deal. We look forward to working with you every single day to make it the law of this country. God bless you.
Thank you. Richard and Lee, thank you very much, because all of the labor unions and others who support this bill, we are all in this together. And to kind of quote the president when he was at a rally, he said, everybody get off your you-know-whats. And we're going to get this bill done by doing that and working together. And now we have the privilege of hearing from a member of one of the really important public sector unions, SEIU, and that is Monica Roberts. Please step up, Monica.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Monica Roberts. I'm an elementary school administrative secretary in Montgomery County, Maryland, and a proud member of SEIU Local 500. Senator Hirono, Representative Cartwright, I would like to thank you for introducing the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act. I would also like to thank each one of this bill's sponsors. Thank you very much. The Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act is a great thing. Now more than ever, working people are calling on our elected leaders to stand beside us and make it easier for us to join together in a union, not harder. America needs good union jobs. Although I will soon be retiring after 30 years in public service, I will continue to stand with my union brothers and sisters and fight to ensure that more working people have access to unions. I'm doing this because I remember those days when I didn't have a union job. It was scary. However, joining SEIU provided me with support, job security, and benefits like paid sick leave. When I needed to have surgery, I was able to afford it and take off work to recover, thanks to the benefits that my coworkers and I were able to negotiate for in our contracts. Being a union member has also provided me with emotional support on the job. I have gone to work every day knowing that I had a place to speak up for myself as well as my coworkers. When I think about how being a part of a strong union has changed not only my life, but the lives of so many working people, I'm grateful. It also makes me angry that the Supreme Court has made it easier for anti-worker extremists to rig the economy further by dividing working people. However, we won't let any court case stand in the way of our fight for the good union jobs that our communities need. We're going to stick together in our union for the power in numbers to raise wages, secure affordable health care, and ensure a dignified retirement. and we're going to keep speaking out for good union jobs for everyone who works. Thank you for standing with us.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
Senator Hirono,
Yes.
would you like to see President Trump nominate a Supreme Court justice who believes that an unborn child with a beating heart is a person entitled to equal protection of the law under the 14th Amendment?
What I'm looking for in the Supreme Court justice is somebody who can be fair, who is not a Republican, that President Trump has said that he would like the Supreme Court to be all Republican. Obviously, that is not what we're looking for. We're looking for fair, impartial justices that can look at the case and be fair. And that is definitely not the direction that President Trump is going, and that is certainly not the direction that this current court is going, because they are very much ideologically very, very conservative, and that does not help people who care about working people, women's rights, or minority rights.
Mr. Trumka, Mr. Saunders. Yesterday it was announced that Americans for Prosperity is going to spend more than $1 million on the Supreme Court fight. Judicial Crisis Network, another group on the right, is going to spend more than $1 million on the Supreme Court fight. What can AFSCME and AFL-CIO do? How much money are you going to spend to organize on this battle for the future ideological balance of the court?
You know, look, it's about talking to your members, and we do that every day. We talk to them during the political campaigns. We talk to them all during the year, and that's what this is about. We've already started doing that. This isn't the first shot that they've taken at us. They've been coming after us for 10 years, financed by all those rich people that you just talked about, the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, and a bunch of others. And yet our members stay with us, and you know why? Because they know that the only way they're ever going to get ahead, get a better wage and a better deal, is if they stick together as one, because they can do together things that no worker can do alone. Our job is to continue to give them the facts, help them, and watch what happens. 262,000 new members last year, 15,000 new members just a few weeks ago. Bring it on. They're taking their best shot. We're going to get past Janus, and as I said, Janus will be a footnote in 10 years.
Let me just add to what Rich said, and it goes to the heart of your question. The attacks on public sector unions, the attacks on working families, they're real attacks, and these folks are trying to hurt us. They're trying to wipe us out. This has nothing to do with First Amendment rights. This has everything to do with power and wealth wanting more at the expense of working families. And that's why they're willing to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to defund, as they quote, I'm quoting them, defund and defang public sector unions. They aren't going to be successful because we knew that this was coming. And so we've been preparing within our union and other unions. We've developed a program called AFSCME Strong, where we are having one-on-one communications with our members and non-members alike. Now, we've got 1.6 million active members and retirees. We've had close to 1 million individual conversations with members and non-members to talk about why they need to be involved in their union, but more importantly, to listen to them. And we have found that when we reach out to them, and this is not rocket science, when we reach out to them and we listen to them and we talk to them, when the Freedom Foundation or the Mackinac Center comes after them, knocks on their doors, our folks tell them to get the hell off their porch. And that's exactly what we continue to need to do. We've got to continue that AFSCME Strong approach in communicating and talking with our folks, mobilizing, educating, and organizing. This is one Supreme Court decision. This is not the death knell for AFSCME or SEIU or AFT or NEA or the entire labor movement. This is a call to action. I actually believe that this is a movement moment where we can all come together, labor and coalition partners, and saying enough is enough, being frustrated and angry, but doing something about it. And I think we'll achieve that goal.
Yes.
Does your legislation
What we do with this bill is to enable people who want to pay union fees to be able to do it through their bank accounts. Because I know it's really hard to believe, but there are actually many states that prohibit public sector employees from having automatic deductions. They want to make it as hard as possible for union members to continue to contribute to the work of their own unions. So this bill will make sure that these kinds of deductions that can occur automatically. Yes, any Supreme Court decision that is based on a constitutional right, which, by the way, the First Amendment right has been weaponized by the Supreme Court, we won't be able to counter unless we change the Constitution. So this is a bill, though, that is going to require all of the states to meet some minimal foundational rights for public sector unions to be able to collectively bargain.